Ratatouille is one of the Disney Pixar movies that, like many of its other creations, had an excellent reception, being nominated 5 times for the Oscars and even winning one for Best Animated Film. If you're one of those strange beings who watch a video about Ratatouille and don't know or haven't seen this film, let me tell you that the movie tells the story of Remy, a rat who dreams of becoming a chef, and after following the instructions of a hallucination in the form of a deceased chef, discovers that he can control the movements of one of the kitchen workers, and ends up taking control of an important restaurant in Paris, or at least that's how I remember the movie. But today we will not talk about the impressive motor control abilities exhibited by Remy, but by one of Gustav's other kitchen workers. As shown in the movie, Horst is the second in command in the kitchen after Skinner, and he is responsible for tasting the food before it is served. This is an extremely significant position for someone who, oddly enough, was in prison for an unknown crime. However, what was the cause for his arrest? And how did he eventually secure a prestigious position in one of the city's most significant restaurants? Today's question has been the central theme of several theories that, despite Horst appearing very briefly on screen and only the basic functions of the restaurant being mentioned, have been widely debated. This is because every time Horst talks about his time in jail, and what he supposedly did to get arrested, he responds with a different story than the one he told last time. So, what did he actually do? After doing some research, I came across a theory that serves as an excellent starting point for our video today. This theory posits that Horst was actually a German commander, who at the end of World War II was arrested and prosecuted in the Nuremberg trials, which were jurisdictional proceedings conducted by the victorious Allied nations in the war. It's not surprising that this is a popular theory, considering that Horst is a German with a mysterious past. Furthermore, the theory also mentions that one of his kitchen colleagues, Larousse, was an arms dealer for a resistance group, apparently referring to one of the many resistance movements created to fight against Nazi invasions between the 1940s and 1950s. This may suggest that Ratatouille is set within a time frame of no more than 20 years after these events, as the chefs are relatively young, so it is not surprising that this has been the prevailing theory. Horst would have lied every time he was asked because, well, he was a Nazi in the past. Another thing is that at the end of the war, typically Nazi commanders didn't just go to prison, but rather their sentence was death penalty. This implies that Horst betrayed the movement by sharing info with the enemy, saving them from death penalty. But why would he want to work in a restaurant? Well, the theory is based on an official description that Pixar gives to the kitchen team of the Tasty restaurant, likening them to a band of pirates. Many nationalities often make up the line chef team working in the best restaurants in France. They come from all over the world, drawn to the kitchens of master chefs to train rigorously with the best. Cooking can also be likened to a military operation. Every chef is given a title, a station, and particular tasks. The colorful characters of Horst, Lalo, and Larousse complete the ranks in tastes. Thus, Horst would be looking for a place where he could perform with the same discipline he was accustomed to in the army, and this could even explain why he holds such a high position due to his military discipline. But as much as all of this aligns, there are still a couple of bumps in this theory, particularly one that is quite significant. There is a part in the movie where Skinner expresses a lot of happiness because the new microwave food line is a complete success. This is all well and good, but it contradicts our theory, as home microwaves began gaining popularity towards the end of the 1970s. Actually, they had scarcely been available since approximately 1972, which would position the movie much later than we had initially thought or anticipated. And the dates do not match up. The chefs working at Gustav's should be over 50 years old for the timeline to fit, which is simply not true based on the available information. So it seems we will have to explore a second theory. And for this, we need to analyze the scenes where Horst appears telling his story, constantly changing versions. The versions we can see are 4. Horst says he defrauded a megacorporation, robbed the second bank of France with just a simple pen, brought down a pole with his thumb, and damaged the ozone layer in Avignon, causing harm to the environment. Today's second theory, proposed by Kira24601 and posted on the Pixar Amino, suggests that Horst never lied but rather recounted a different crime each time he was asked. That, or they were simply different facets of the same crime. The scam, a megacorporation, and the assault on the second largest bank in France with a pen could easily have been the same crime. Technically, a bank is a mega corporation, as we are talking about a bank of great importance. Many individuals have envisioned that he could have utilized the pen in the finest John Wick style, but the simplest way Horst could have stolen from a bank with a pen was by employing someone else's identity and writing himself a massive check. Alternatively, he could have fabricated a document or written on a sheet claiming he possessed a weapon, employed it against a cashier, and obtained the money. Nothing unnecessarily violent. His next crime is also curious. In the version in its original language, Horst never talks about a pole, but rather says he killed a man with just his thumb, and although this is physically possible and quite violent, it doesn't have to be. Interestingly, there is a theory that suggests that Horst actually initiates a chain reaction by using his thumb to activate his pen and defraud the bank. The decline of a corporation also affects individuals who rely on it for employment, and this would have left an innocent person in a difficult situation. It is quite possible that this chain reaction may have led to the death of someone, perhaps an elderly person in need of medical attention but now lacking the funds, or an unfortunate member of a family that solely relied on this bank for survival. With this same logic, we can explain his latest crime, his harm to the ozone layer in Avignon. I mean, it could have been an environmental disaster, or it could have just been the use of a highly polluting vehicle in that area. There is a theory that has been proposed by Sarah Weaver on Quora, which begins by analyzing the lifestyles of the characters in order to precisely determine when Ratatouille takes place, and its connection to another important movie from Pixar. We can observe that there are no computers, mobile phones, or internet. Thus, we are aware that the film is set prior to the computer revolution of 1995. Similarly, when we pay attention to the car models featured in the movie, it becomes evident that the time frame of the events is around the 1960s, most likely the early years of the decade. This is confirmed by the characters' clothing and even the overall representation of Paris. And that brings us to the most important part of this theory, the appearance of Bon Voyage, the supervillain seen in the first act of The Incredibles. Yes, there is a scene where we can observe him working as a mime, something that curiously is a component of his supervillain identity. And honestly, I would have assumed it was merely an Easter egg if it were not for the numerous references to The Incredibles in this movie. When Skinner chases Remy through Paris, we can see a poster of Mr. Incredible in his old suit, and even Bomb Voyage appears in a newspaper headline that Colette reads. This very openly suggests that Ratatouille and The Incredibles take place in the same universe. We also know that thanks to one of the scenes in The Incredibles, when Bob is reading the newspaper, the second part of that movie takes place in 1962. Thus, Mr. Incredible would have only obtained his new suit that year, so knowing that the poster has his old suit, Ratatouille takes place no later than that same year. No problems with microwaves at this date, which greatly impacts the timeline, is our main concern. You will recall that the technology in the world of The Incredibles is more advanced than in the real world, so it is likely that Ratatouille takes place before 1962, regardless of whether there are microwaves or not. But what does all this have to do with Horst? Well, something I haven't mentioned is a short scene in the second act of the movie, when Linguini ends up with the restaurant. Here Skinner is spying on the kitchen, and Horst catches him, sending him flying with a flick of his thumb. Yes, it may not seem like a very important scene, but that is an impressive amount of strength, a superhuman force. I believe that Horst is not just a former criminal, but a former criminal with super strength. And if we consider for a moment that Horst was actually a retired supervillain, this would indeed explain his insensitivity towards the death of Linguini's mother and his self-centered behavior at the end of the movie, as he is the first to leave and abandon the restaurant. This would explain many things, and we wouldn't have to try to explain all the things it mentions, something that all theories discussing this topic fall into. It is likely that the stories he told were literal, and we do not need to resort to chain reactions or confusing explanations. Being a former supervillain, he could have done all that easily. It's also clear that after being in prison, he had a change of heart, as he now works at a high-caliber restaurant. So it seems that something happened in his life that made him a better person. With the adjustment in the timeline, knowing we share the universe with The Incredibles, we realize it's almost certain Horst was a German supervillain in Nazi Germany. Judging by his way of being and interacting with other chefs, he doesn't seem to be a Nazi, although he most likely was a criminal, making Horst a peculiar kind of anti-hero. This opens up a lot of possibilities. But the truth is we have no idea about anything that could have happened to him during World War II. We don't know if he hid or assisted in the war, or if he was a spy for a certain side, or if he simply committed crimes solely for his own benefit. To answer the question in this video, Horst went to prison for being a superpowered criminal who defrauded a mega corporation, robbed the second bank of France with a pen, damaged his Renavinon cape, and killed someone with his thumb. Easily, I must add, thanks to his incredible super strength. So I hope you enjoyed this peculiar video. Before we finish, I would like to mention that the new music video by Scarlet Isle of Pala is available on YouTube if you'd like to watch it. Isla de Pala is a space funk band that I'm in, by the way. So without further ado, give the video a like if you enjoyed it, subscribe for more videos like this, and see you in the next video. Goodbye.